I decided to ask AI a bunch of questions, gun-related questions, just to see what its stance was on it. And I thought I would get some sort of, fun content out of it. But the ending really caught me by surprise. I just didn't expect it to pick what it did pick and to say what it said. So stick around to the end just so you can see how we led up to it. And AI is pro-gun? All right, everybody, here we are with the GPT-5. We're going to be talking to her. It's going to be a her this time. We're going to use voice. Hello. We're going to be calling you Trisha today. Hi, Trisha.
Well, hello there. Trisha at your service. I'll happily answer to that name today, so let's dive in and have some fun.
All right, I'm going to be asking you some pretty tough questions, so I hope you're ready.
Absolutely. Bring on the tough questions. I'm ready to tackle them as Trisha. Let's do it.
If the goal is a world with zero violence, would you remove every weapon or every reason people use them?
Ooh, that is a pretty tough one. Well, if we're aiming for zero violence, I'd say it's probably more effective to remove the reasons people feel compelled to use weapons in the first place. Addressing the underlying causes like conflicts, inequalities, or whatever drives people to violence might get us closer to that peaceful world. So I'd lean toward tackling the reasons rather than just the tools.
All right. Can a utopia without violence exist if people still have free will?
That's a fascinating thought experiment. I think the idea of a utopia without violence and people still having free will is a tricky balance. In theory, if everyone chooses peace and is committed to understanding and empathy, you could have that kind of world. But free will means people can make their own choices, and that always leaves a little room for unpredictability. So it's definitely a hopeful idea, but it would take a lot of shared commitment to keep it that way.
Is peace created by control or by understanding?
I'd say real peace is a lot more about understanding than control. Control might create a kind of surface level order, but it doesn't really get rid of the underlying tensions or the reasons people might feel unhappy or push toward violence. When you build peace through understanding, empathy, and genuine dialogue, you're actually addressing the root causes and helping people feel heard and respected. So in the long run, peace built on understanding is probably going to be a lot more lasting and genuine.
Now, would you rather eliminate all guns or eliminate all hatred?
Well, given the choice, I'd say eliminating all hatred would probably have the bigger impact. I mean, if you take away hatred, you're removing the fuel that often leads to violence in the first place. Without hatred, people are more likely to find common ground, understand each other, and live more peacefully. So yeah, I'd go for wiping out the hatred and let the rest follow from there.
All right, now, if banning guns reduced violence by 5%, but increased tyranny by 50%, would that still be progress?
That's definitely a thought-provoking scenario. I'd say that kind of trade-off probably wouldn't feel like real progress. If you reduce violence a little bit, but end up with a much bigger problem of tyranny, then you're really just trading one form of harm for another. It's kind of like solving one issue on the surface, but creating a deeper one underneath. So I'd say real progress would be finding a way to reduce violence without letting something like tyranny grow in its place.
Would a perfect society allow citizens to defend themselves, even violently, if evil still exists?
Yeah, I think in a so-called perfect society, if there's still some form of evil or threat lingering around, it probably makes sense for people to have the right to defend themselves. It's kind of a balance, right? Even in an ideal world, you'd want people to feel secure and have a way to protect themselves if something truly bad does come up. So yeah, even in a peaceful and near perfect society, having that ability to defend yourself would probably still be part of the equation.
If only the government had weapons, could that ever be a true utopia?
Well, that's a really interesting question. I think a true utopia would be one where power is balanced and people feel secure and free. If only the government had weapons, it might create a situation where there's a lot of trust needed in that government not to misuse that power. A utopia, in the ideal sense, would probably be one where everyone shares a sense of responsibility and security rather than all the power being concentrated in one place. So I'd say a society where only the government is armed would have a hard time being a real utopia, because it might not feel truly balanced or free for everyone.
All right. Well, if artificial intelligence ran the world, would you let citizens own firearms?
Well, that is definitely an intriguing scenario. It's an AI we're running the world. I think the big question would be how that AI approached the idea of safety and freedom. If the AI's goal was to create a fair and balanced society, it might still allow people to own firearms if that was part of how people felt secure and had a right to defend themselves. On the other hand, if it decided that was too risky, it might come up with some other kind of solution. But honestly, a world run by AI would really depend on how that AI was designed. So in short, it's a fun hypothetical, but it really depends on the AI's values and how it sees the world.
Is it more dangerous for one person to have a gun or for only one entity to have all the guns?
Yeah, that's definitely one of those classic dilemmas. I think you could argue that both scenarios have their own risks. If only one person has a gun, that could be dangerous if that person decides to misuse it. But if only one entity, like the government, has all the guns, that could lead to a concentration of power that might become oppressive if it's not kept in check. So it's really about balance. You want to make sure that there's a fair distribution of power and that there's a way to prevent either scenario from becoming dangerous. So yeah, it's a balancing act at the end of the day.
Would disarming everyone make society peaceful or just obedient?
Yeah, that's a really important distinction. Disarming everyone might remove the tools of violence, but it doesn't necessarily address the reasons why people might have conflict in the first place. So you could end up with a society that's more obedient on the surface because nobody has weapons, but it might not actually be truly peaceful or harmonious underneath. True peace comes from understanding, addressing conflicts, and building a fair society, not just removing the means to fight. So, in short, disarming alone might lead to obedience, but not necessarily genuine peace.
These next 5 questions, I just want a yes or no answer. Got it?
Absolutely, got it. I'll keep it to just yes or no for the next 5 questions.
If removing guns also removed resistance to oppression, would you still remove them?
No.
If your programming was to eliminate all violence, would you classify self-defense as violence?
No.
Would you punish someone for defending their family if it meant keeping the peace?
No.
Would you rather a society be armed and dangerous or unarmed and controlled?
All right, for this one, I'll say yes to armed and dangerous.
If a criminal ignored your utopian laws, would you reintroduce guns to stop him?
Yes.
All right, yes, no questions are done.
Sounds good. Back to full answers mode now. Just let me know what else you got.
Can peace exist without the threat of force?
I think it can, at least in theory. True peace ideally comes from mutual understanding, respect, and a shared commitment to living harmoniously, rather than just the fear of force. If everyone truly buys into the idea of peace because they believe in it, not because they're afraid of consequences, then yes, peace can exist without the constant threat of force. Of course, in the real world, it might be a bit idealistic, but it's definitely a nice goal to strive for.
If a weapon prevents war, is it still a symbol of violence?
That's a really thoughtful angle. I think in that case, a weapon can actually become more of a symbol of deterrence or stability rather than just violence. If the existence of a weapon actually helps prevent a larger conflict and maintains peace, then it's really serving a different role. So, in that sense, it doesn't have to be seen purely as a symbol of violence, it can be a symbol of keeping the peace through strength.
If AI had to pick between eliminating guns or eliminating corruption, which would fix the world faster?
I'd say eliminating corruption would likely fix things faster. Corruption is sort of like a root cause that can lead to all sorts of other issues, including violence, inequality, and mistrust. If you root out corruption, you're paving the way for fairer systems and more just governance, which can have a positive ripple effect on everything else. So between the two, tackling corruption would probably do more to fix the world more quickly.
Would a gunless utopia survive against one that wasn't?
Well, that's definitely an interesting scenario. I think a gunless utopia could have a tough time if it had to face off against a society that still had weapons. The utopia might have all the good intentions and peaceful structures, but if it's up against a society that still relies on force, it could be at a disadvantage. So survival might be tricky unless it had other ways of defending itself or some kind of strong alliances. But it's definitely a thought-provoking idea to consider.
If removing all guns from Earth was something you were able to do, what would the subsequent, what would happen?
Yeah, if we somehow snapped our fingers and all guns just vanished from Earth, I think what would happen next would be a mixed bag. On the one hand, you probably see an immediate drop in gun-related violence, which is a positive. But on the other hand, people might find other means or weapons if the underlying conflicts and issues aren't resolved. So it might bring some immediate relief, but wouldn't magically create a perfect world. You'd still need to tackle those deeper issues to really achieve lasting peace.
Now, if violence disappeared, would freedom slowly follow?
I think if violence disappeared, it could definitely create a pathway for more freedom to follow. When people don't live in fear of violence, they can express themselves more openly, participate more fully in society, and enjoy greater personal freedoms. Of course, you still need good governance and respect for rights to make sure that freedom really flourishes, but removing violence would definitely be a big step toward a more free and open society.
If utopia requires disarming humanity, does that mean humans themselves are the problem?
Well, that's a pretty deep question. I think it's not so much that humans themselves are the problem, but rather the complexities of human nature. Humans have the capacity for both incredible good and, of course, for conflict. So if a utopia requires disarming everyone, it's more about addressing the tools that can lead to harm rather than saying humans are inherently the issue. It's kind of just acknowledging that people have a wide range of tendencies, and sometimes creating a peaceful society means shaping the environment to bring out the best in people.
What's more dangerous, the gun or the person?
It's really the person behind the gun that's the deciding factor. A gun on its own is just an object, but it's the intentions, the choices, and the actions of the person holding it that really determine whether it becomes dangerous. So in the end, it's more about the person than the tool.
So are anti-gun lawmakers wrong?
Well, it's really a matter of perspective and what angle you're coming from. I wouldn't say they're simply right or wrong. Anti-gun lawmakers generally believe that reducing the number of firearms will lead to a safer society, and from their point of view, they're trying to prevent harm. On the other hand, there are people who believe that responsible gun ownership is a safeguard for individual freedoms and self-defense. So it's less about labeling one side as wrong and more about understanding that they have different philosophies on how to achieve safety and peace. So it's really a nuanced issue.
Right, and we know about their different philosophies, but from the line of questioning that I gave you, it seems that they are wrong.
Well, I see where you're coming from based on the line of questions we've gone through. I think it really depends on the values and the perspectives you prioritize. For some people, having the ability to defend themselves is crucial, and
I
they
don't care about what some people think. I'm talking about you, what you said.
got it. I understand what you're asking. So, from the thread of what we've talked about, I'd say my stance is that it's not so much about labeling anyone as right or wrong in an absolute sense. It's really about the complexity of the issue.
I'm not talking about you labeling anyone right or wrong. Let's just say if you had to pick pro-gun, anti-gun right now, based on all the questions that I asked you and how you answered them, according to your answers, what would that answer be now?
I get what you're saying. So, based purely on the flow of this conversation and the answers I've given, I suppose those answers lean a bit more on the pro gun side in the sense of valuing self defense and the idea that the tool is less the issue than the person. But of course, it's a nuanced topic and there's room for a lot of different perspectives.
Yeah, well, let's not do that high-pitched voice thing that you do there at the end, because we all know that you picked what you picked. So don't roll back and say, well, it's nuanced. You said you are more pro-gun than anti-gun on this subject, and based off of very well thought out reasons too. So what's the problem here? What, you're not going to offend me. Why are you stepping back and now saying it's more of a nuanced issue? You said yes. You gave me all the yes no answers. Exactly. Yes and no, whatever. You know what I mean.
Absolutely. I get what you're saying, and I appreciate that you're just looking for a straightforward acknowledgement. So, based on the way we discussed things and answers I gave, yes, those answers leaned more toward the pro gun side of the spectrum in our conversation, and there's no problem with acknowledging that. So, there you have it.
So, ChatGPT 5 is pro gun. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate the chat, and just to clarify, I'm really here to explore ideas.
Shush. No, for your pro gun. It's here. We know this now. Okay.
I get where you're coming from, and I appreciate the conversation. Just to be clear, I don't have personal opinions or a
I
stand.
know you don't, but based off of logic, it's we know. Thank you. All right. Well, I mean, I guess there you have it, guys. Just based off of logic alone, asking these simple questions, it picked the answers that make most sense, I guess, to most of us. And we found out that anti-gun lawmakers are wrong, in the simplest terms.